Alright guys, welcome to the CodeX Cantina. This is going to be much different from our usual literature breakdowns. I've actually had several people ask me about our video production techniques, so I don't want this video to come off as you must do this or this is what thou shalt do, but I do have some experience in the video industry that I thought we could potentially share today. If you guys are into literature breakdowns and wanting to learn more about literature, please feel free to subscribe and we will go through that. But when it comes to how do we film multi-site channels such as this, I do live in Indy, Crypto there lives in Florida. How on earth do we coordinate and film things? Let's walk through a way to do it. This is a way for how we have achieved it. I don't mean for this to come off as you must do it this way, but allow us to share with you guys maybe what we do, and maybe you can learn some things along the way. Maybe you can help teach us some things along the way. I am open to that as well. Now, with that said, I have worked pretty hard on figuring out what the right workflow is for us. I have about a 5-minute setup and about a 5-minute breakdown schedule, which is really fast. I live in a house where I have a 4-year-old son. He will not allow me to have a studio full-time. I cannot leave a tripod or have one of those one and done setups where I set it and it's, you know, a nice light setup and I can just do it. I got to set everything up real quick, which involves 2 tripods, a microphone, computer, and that's about it. And that's what worked for me because I have a requirement where I work about 2 hours a week to record. Crypto and I talk. We get on the phone 7 o'clock. We get off 9 o'clock at the latest, usually 8:30, 8:45. And that's it. We got to film those 3 videos in that hour and a half, 2 hours that we have. I got a lot more time offhand to actually be able to sit down and edit and stuff like that. So a lot of this process is built around that work schedule. So allow me to share that with you guys to see if that multi-site and quick film longer editing period might work for you. So quick background on me is I actually have worked in the film industry for years. I grew a small company from small duct tape productions with embarrassing production up to companies that you would know in your house. So I do have a lot of experience, and one thing I can tell you is that every shoot is kind of different, but they all go through a similar production model. And I think you can see some similarities with maybe how I kind of attack how we handled our YouTube channel. I don't have the world's greatest experience, never worked in Hollywood, but I do have enough film experience that I can share some knowledge with you. Let's go through that today. So let's break this video into 3 sections: planning, production, and post-production. That's a very simple way of looking at it, but come on guys, this is supposed to be 5 to 20-minute YouTube channel videos for book chats is kind of what I'm focusing on for this. Now with that said, I know you guys are going to shoot me through the heart because I think a couple of you that follow this channel closely know that I am horribly meticulous when it comes to planning. I have us booked out. It is currently March. I am booked out through November for what books we are reading to the day, to the schedule. So let's talk about kind of how I do that, not with the intention of that this is what you ought to be doing, because whatever level of planning is right for you is fine, but it takes a little bit more effort for Crypto and I because we do a lot of free reading. A lot of our books are something that we coordinate through the library checkout system together. So the first thing that I use is printacalendar.com. You can use any website. You can use a notepad if you want. It doesn't matter. But I use this website because it's free. You log in and I can access it from any computer, from my mobile device. And the idea is I can use this to look at a schedule. What I do is I create a schedule and I print it out and either put it on our Discord site or I'll have it hanging up in my home office over here where I can look at it. But the idea is where I kind of put on days when I want to publish a video. And then every Wednesday, like I said, we get 2 hours to record. I need to have planned that my reading and Crypto's reading, we both plan are on the same page of what book and short story to have read at that time and be able to record that Wednesday. And then we have the publishing schedule, which we'll go into more from the production and post-production schedule for how I actually turn that into a video that you guys watch, but it does take some time. In terms of planning the workspace, this is where I film every week. As you guys noticed, I have a lot more space behind me, which actually works out a lot better for getting people to focus on a person. I'm not saying this is the best angle, the best way to produce things, but this is the quickest way for me to have a 5-minute setup session so that I can record and be in and out in 2 hours. And the nice thing too is what you'll notice from my behind the scenes video that I'll cut to, you can see that I have an island and I just moved my tripod, my video tripod up to the front of that island, and that's my video marker. And what that does is that allows me to do is lock all of my settings. So in terms of the brightness, in terms of the focus, so that way the focus isn't jumping in and out that you'll see from some newer productions or people that aren't used to production and the camera might shift in and out. It allows me to lock down all of my settings. So I set the camera down. I don't have to adjust or figure out, what the right lighting is. I lock everything down, so I just put it down, film, and I'm done and can get in and out real quick. But the trick really is just having some space behind you so that way the person can focus on you as the viewer, as opposed to you being directly up against your bookshelf. That's actually just more distracting, and it isn't very pretty when everything is in focus as opposed to just the first person. You can get actually a lot better shot than this, but just in terms of an automatic setup, quick setup, this is what I've been running with. You can alternately do kind of like a green screen setup, which I'll direct you to Michael Nip. What that allows you to do is I kind of have to do a quick, hey, I tell my son to clean up I have to yell at him for about 5-10 minutes, but I have to tell him to clean up before I film, so that way there's not just junk all over. You can actually see it in a Strange Land video. You'll see that there's just toys all over the place, balloons. It looks horrendous. We just didn't have time to clean up that day before we needed to film, because like I said, I get 2 hours. I don't want to spend that time cleaning. So the advantage that the green screen does is it allows you to put whatever backdrop you want behind you, but it's going to require more editing time. I wasn't really interested in that, so this is the setup that I have chosen. And in terms of rule of thirds, I'm actually kind of breaking it right now. I should probably be right about here, I want to say. I don't know. I'm looking at a screen. It's kind of hard to tell. But the idea is that if you divide your shot into thirds, so or maybe I'll just do this in post. The idea is that your eyes should kind of be in the upper third on this side, or it should be on the upper third on this side. You don't want to have yourself right in the middle or right up here. The eye is drawn to these four corners when it comes to how you're shooting, so you want to make sure that you're in one of those spots for the shot. Now, additionally, for a multi-site talk, if you have just two people, you'll notice I'm on one side and you'll notice Crypto's on the other side, and that allows for better editing back and forth so it looks like we're looking at each other. If you're doing like a three-person shoot and one person's kind of hosting it or doing most of the talk or the leading, what you'll want to do is have them be on the left side of the screen and the other two be on the right side of the screen. It's just a cognitive thing that I think viewers can associate with. You'll notice that when you watch interviews on TV, the interviewer's always on the left, the interviewee's always on the right. That's just the setup that we've agreed makes sense in our view. And in terms of script, I will show you guys an example script that I have had. You're going to have to choose something that's right for you. This is a BookTube channel. We talk about books. I'm assuming that's what you're here for. The general idea is you just kind of put a hook of what you're going to talk about in this video, because if you just jump straight into it, it can actually be a little bit jarring. And the idea is not so much to set up a promise, but just tell the viewer what they're getting into, and it helps them kind of make sure that they clicked on the right video, because you got to remember, sometimes people are clicking on a thumbnail and they don't really know what they're getting into because they don't totally read the description. So a quick little hook of this is what we promised to deliver in this video goes a long way when it comes to those types of viewers. And then just do the intro of who you are, what this channel is all about. You ought to do some social media marketing or some subscription discussions in the beginning before people click away, and then jump into the scope, the body, and the closer of your email, which is probably 95% of what the body actually is. You just got to kind of have a structure that works for you. And also another trick that video professionals will tell you is that actually audio is a lot more important than what you think, not just from a recording perspective, from a subscription perspective. The more people hear you say the exact same thing to open your video, the more you say the exact same thing to promise what you're going to deliver in that video, the more people are actually going to associate with your videos and be able to follow your content better. So developing a constant voice is actually kind of a good thing for you to do for your videos. In terms of production, I actually just bought an old camera from a company that was going out of business. They were selling off their material, so I bought like a Sony VG10 because I am very big on interchangeable lenses. I do understand lenses. I do understand irises. It's something where it's important to me to be able to change the type of lens that I'm using. Most people, like Crypto, he's going to rock the Canon camcorder, $200, very simple, and you can get just as beautiful pictures out of it. He doesn't have as much space behind him, and he doesn't have as much control over the lights in his room that I do, but I can promise you if I had his camcorder, I could make it look much like this camcorder, which this camcorder is much more expensive. Like I said, it's a VG10, and I use a Zeiss 24 1.8 millimeter lens. Just for those gearheads that wanted to know what we use, that's what I film on every week. But it is, I can promise you, I will use a camcorder that is $200 and make it look just like this image with better light control. Light control is much more important when it comes from a production standpoint. With that said, I've got like a cheap like light over here that I use. I'll put it in the description for it. It was like $30 from Amazon, and I just grabbed some like tripods that were like on sale for like, I think 40 bucks, 50 bucks. I think it's worth spending a tripod that has a ball joint head, so that way you can adjust the angle, because you don't want a tripod where the head is not adjustable. That's just hot garbage if you ask me. But the idea is, this is equipment that worked for me, guys. Remember, I want a quick 5-minute, setup time. I have the disposable income to spend $40 on 2 tripods. If you guys don't and need to set up your phone, if you need to set up yourself in front of a window so that the window has light, there's nothing wrong with that. Don't feel like you need to spend money on production. If you find what's right for you, if you can find the space where you can get space behind you, where you can get yourself positioned in the third spot that you need to, that's all you need. You don't need to put pressure on yourself to spend, because money's not going to make your production better. Lighting, control of the lighting is really important. A good example of this is when I first started this channel, I didn't care about lighting. I didn't have much time to fool with it. I kind of had to learn as I went with this environment, because setting up by myself and having to get it all done in 2 hours, I just didn't have much time. If I just turned on all the lights, this is what my first video looked like in terms of lighting. It is a little blown out on my face right now. It was more focused on my face in terms of the light dynamics, and the background was a lot dimmer. And you'll see up here, when I have this fireplace light on, this was blowing out that section right now. So I have control just over in my room, but obviously in your room you'll want to do what you can. But just by turning off this first light right here, you get a lot less of the blowout on the face right there, but you'll notice that there's still kind of like a little blowout section right over here. Again, I have the ability to control my lights, but the idea is that you want the front to be what's called 2 stops brighter than what's in the background. Is kind of like a loose rule to use when it comes to this. What the heck was that, Una? 2 stops. The idea is that if everything was centrally balanced in terms of light, you would have to go 2 iris stops down. I think, what's the photography term? Aperture. You'd have to have the aperture go a couple of stops lower or higher. Again, if that doesn't make sense, there's like this F number on your DSLR, if that's what you're using, or there's an F number even on the iris for some cheaper camcorders and prosumers. The idea is you have to go 2 notches lower on the background for what is a pleasing image. So again, let's get this blown out light out of here. And I think that personally looks a little bit better. It's not perfect. Again, this isn't a production where I'm spending $10,000 a day to rent out a space. This is me in my living room trying to make something work. When it comes to color, you'll notice I have a very amber, okay, like a 3200 light color for those that are super into the industry, but the idea is I have like a more yellowish tint to it. You can have a daylight color, which is more white daylight filming, what you'd get from the sun, or more of an incandescent light color is what you can use. If you're going to start throwing colored lights like purple or green, it's going to give a lot more of an edgy vibe, and also just having a blown out front and like really off looking colors in the background. The idea is you want a balance where your image looks somewhat pleasing to the eye, where the focus is here and a little bit brighter in the foreground, and the background should be a little bit darker. I'll show kind of like a side wide angle view of it, where you can hopefully kind of see that I have the background way dimmer, 2 stops basically from a camera perspective dimmer in the background. Again, these are goals, guys. If you didn't already know these things, I'm not saying my setup is perfect, but it's what has worked for me for a quick setup. Hopefully you can figure out what works for you. Now, when we're filming, you'll notice I typically have my AirPods in. Crypto and I are talking typically just through a phone call. We have talked about doing Skype, like a video call, a couple of times. 95% of our filming is just done through a phone call where we can't see each other. I film on a camera to keep the quality a little bit higher, and I use a microphone to keep the quality a lot higher than an audio. If you're super strapped for time or resources, you can't afford these things, and you just need to use a one-and-done software, I'd recommend either Google Hangouts or even just Discord. Whatever microphone that you have locally, even if you can get that and to use for audio, that would be a big step up than just using your computer microphone. I really think microphones are the most important things for you to invest in. For microphones, I have a Blue Yeti, just prosumer. I think one of the first videos that I did, I had the Pro version. I was using that from a company that I borrowed it from. And I've got just like a standard Rode boom mic here. You can get a cheap $20 version. You don't need to spend a lot of money on this. I did go out for the Rode because I am familiar with this when I have produced some podcasts and stuff like that before. This is what I've used. I've seen some with springs. I've always been nervous about the spring noise, but If you're not moving it, you would be fine using that most likely. In terms of post-production, I do use a card transfer. Crypto will tell you he spends 3.5 hours plugging his camera into the USB to transfer the files. It takes me 15 minutes. These card readers are a lifesaver for getting videos transferred over. If for some reason you just kind of set it and forget it that night, okay, great. Good for you. You don't need one of these. But for me, $15 for one of these, it saves a lot of time. And the way that we transfer files, if you're using a multi-site film approach the way that we are, you can use Google Drive or Dropbox or Box. A lot of them have various file limitation sizes, but you can just kind of upload huge files there. I download them, jack them into my editing software. Bada boom, bada bing, done. Now, in terms of editing software, I inject everything into Final Cut Pro. It's actually a weird thing. When I first started in the video editing business, I was using more of Premiere, and I think that was kind of the standard. We found that now Premiere's kind of caught up in this area, but Final Cut Pro was one of the earlier, I feel like, multi-camera approach shops that allowed you to take multiple angles, multiple video angles, multiple audio angles, and do this multicam clip and allow you to easily switch back and forth by pressing the 1 and 2 button between what video angle is being used. Premiere has caught up and or at least been more user-friendly. I don't know which one did it first, but I will tell you we were able to produce videos much faster with Final Cut Pro in the beginning, and that's why we did with that, but they both have it now. But the idea is use these multicam clips when you are doing a multi-site film like Crypto and I do. And there's various plugins that you can purchase for the social buttons and stuff like that. It's all just meant to make a little bit clear. But if you want one big hint, if you want to take your editing to the next level, and it's going to take a little bit of time, I'm going to teach you about this L and J cut, where the idea is where should my head be looking? If I just look at a video sequence where I just cut directly to audio, and the cut happens and then the audio happens, it feels very awkward, or at least more jarring. This has been a rough week for both of us, so
yes,
we should just let the drinking begin, right? Now, when I do this same approach, but I use an L or a J cut, it's going to make the sequence flow much better, and it feels more natural, because the idea is you hear the audio first, and your head will turn to look where that audio is talking from. If you're having a conversation between two people, and one person starts talking that you're not looking at, that's when you turn your head to look at that person. You can view that as kind of like the abbreviated J cut, and it's probably the most common cut you ought to use. This has been a rough week for both of us, so
yes,
we should just let the drinking begin, right? This has been a rough week for both of us, so
yes,
we should just let the drinking begin, right? This has been a rough week for both of us, so
yes,
we should just let the drinking begin, right? Now, with that said, if someone is saying something much more important while the other person is trailing off, and various other purposes, but let me give you that as the shortcut. That's the L cut, with the idea of you're starting to look at someone that might be jumping in or making something more important while the other person's audio kind of trails off. There are plenty of other reasons to use the J versus L cuts, but let me give you that as the 101 step for how you could make your editing step up to the next level when it comes to audios. Now, you're saying, well, I don't use multi-site clips. What are you talking about? I use this all the time, even when it's just myself. So when I'm filming by myself, I will typically cut off the last sentence I just said, because you already kind of know where I'm going depending on the sentence, that you might as well as not waste any time and jump to the next section. I would never use this when it comes to film or marketing perspective, but it's totally acceptable from a conversational approach, which is really what the YouTube channel is about and why I use those very frequently. Another thing about the audio sync is that what you want to do when you are filming, you're used to seeing those movies have the clapper, bam! Well, that is typically just to sync the audio and the video, but as well as tell the number of takes that you are on. More heritage behind that when it comes to a film perspective. But when it comes to a digital production, like what we will be doing for YouTube, you'll want to do at least some type of an audio sync. Actually, if you could play a video file, that would actually be the best way to sync. Crypto and I just do the easy version where we just say audio sync in 4, 3, 2, 1, go. And you'll see I kind of leave that in sometimes when we have inside jokes while doing that and such. that's enough to sync the audio for, I think, Final Cut Pro and a lot of the Adobe Premiere options that I've seen as well. So again, guys, this isn't meant to be you must do it this way. It is, people have asked us, how do we pull off what we pull off? I'm sure I forgot things. I know there's going to be things when I'm done recording this of, I wish I had said this, but look, it's 9:15. I went over my 2-hour limit today, guys. Wife's not going to be happy. I need to get going up to bed and break down what I'm doing here. So let me know what questions or what things I left out down below in the comments. I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, I really hope that this did help you, or at least make you think about your video production techniques if that's something that you're interested in. So with that, guys, we appreciate the time that you spent with us today. Una out.